Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about being a senior, so let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what is it like working as a senior software engineer at a tech company? Well, it depends on the company that you are working for. Usually the only real difference, quote unquote now a little bit, between being like a mid-level and a senior or something like that is in terms of how much extra responsibility are you taking on as opposed to just doing coding, because the vast majority of software developers are mid-level. I mean, we call them, we really do call everybody a senior as soon as they reach a certain threshold of knowledge. But if we're going to make a distinction, usually the seniors are, as I said in a few videos, their role has more to do with experience and architecture and leadership and so forth on top of the coding, depending now on like what type of roles we're talking about, because you might find that you have in some companies senior level software developers who are like really good, but they only do coding because the company is not in a position at that moment where it makes a lot of sense to do a lot of other stuff. Like as a senior software developer, you might be doing all the coding because you simply don't need someone to formulate an opinion on how to do certain architectural decisions, etc. So the involvement that you have is more at the code level, where you might be guiding like conversations, or like you might be talking with the teams about, I mean, assuming now that if you're just another teammate, then it doesn't really matter, then it's like the exact same job as a mid-level or a junior level developer has. The only difference is like how much do people expect from you, if that makes sense. That's, I think, a better way of putting it. How much are you expected to produce or perform or do, etc. And the difference between a senior and a mid-level is like almost nothing. If anything, it's like the senior is expected to basically be able to solve practically any problem, whereas the mid-level is expected to be able to solve most problems, but asking for help is normal and so forth, and sometimes they need some support. And the junior is expected to be able to produce something, but usually the expectations are lower on them, and like they are expected to ask for a lot of help, etc. But the seniors, that's on average the way it works in the simplest case. In the more advanced situations, the way it works is that the company will have different technical initiatives, or they want to make certain things happen, or they have like changes in policy or so forth, and then usually the seniors are the ones who are going to be responsible in some way for making that happen. It can be anything from educating people, creating work frameworks, creating like suggestions on improvements, facilitating everything from like facilitating meetups or facilitating like learning lunches. There's tons of these sorts of things that you could be doing as a senior level software developer, and the closer you get to the leadership of the company, the more of that sort of thing you're expected to be doing. And it's really it's really down to how well do you understand how to run an IT company, basically. Because there are seniors who never get to that point, like never like have that sort of experience, because they're only focusing on the coding, because they simply, either because they don't have an interest in moving in some other direction, they're really just about the tech, and then, as I said, it's the exact same thing as everybody else is doing, more or less. But the more impact that you have, the more often you will find that impact comes from domain knowledge, being involved in product planning, and like coming up with suggestions for stakeholders for how to solve different problems and so forth, because a lot of technical knowledge is necessary in many cases to solve a lot of the product issues that companies have. And that's usually the sort of thing that the seniors are doing. So you might take more meetings as a senior level software developer, and in some cases you might even get a specific title for it. The highest responsibility that I have had, for example, is what was it called? It's like staff engineer or something like that, which is like some category for it. Can mean everything from architect to like all kinds of other things. There's like a definition that I looked at. I can't remember all the different things you could be doing, and that's basically the it's the highest position that I know of that you can have, where you still do like coding and you're actually involved in the teams and like doing things at the team level, if that makes sense. I mean, there are people who are higher up than that, like our enterprise architects and so forth and so forth, but when you get to that level, like it's at least the ones that I've talked to, they abandoned their coding like years after before getting that job, because at that level you're planning out the architecture of like an entire company, and in this case it was like a gigantic corporation where the work is like all meetings. It's all like mapping things out on a UML chart or like a flow chart, because that's literally how big it is. It's more business and planning than it is anything else. But when the title that I've held is, I'm not sure if I'm still going to have it by the time this comes out, but anywho, that's the one that where you're like, my job is literally just, alright, I'm assigned a problem. It can be any problem. In this specific instance, it was like take over this. It started out this way. My first project, or the first thing that they gave me, was, here is this project that they built 7 months ago. It's a hackathon project. Can you make sure that this gets converted into an enterprise level application that's serious and robust and can be maintained and like developed correctly? Yeah, sure. So they put me in there. I take over the tech lead position. They add a few engineers to my team, and then I set up everything from the testing strategy to like what technology we're standardizing on, or like the refactors, like how we're like the technical roadmap, basically how we're going to like do deployments, how the product's going to go forward. I facilitate all the meetings. I basically run the entire team. And then we get a product owner, etc., etc., and I start being a liaison towards this person and give them technical feedback and suggestions, etc. I basically do like all of the stuff that the tech lead does, right? And then the next request comes in, and I like when we're sort of halfway through with that, and they say, yeah, this has been looking good, it's working. Can you now establish a platform for all of our systems where like we can where we can host multiple systems within like some type of a holistic experience? And I go, yeah, sure. Then that's my next mission, if that makes sense. And so in that sort of role, it's a senior level position, if that makes sense. I don't really consider myself like a true senior, but it's a position where this is an extreme example of how different the experience can be. Because if you're quote unquote just one of the seniors that I work with, because they are titled senior level software developer, then all you do is you get your story card, you do like the grooming and preparations and so forth with the team, and then you just work on that story. That's all you ever do. It's the same thing that the juniors are doing, but in my case, as I said, it's a much more holistic role where I'm literally tasked with figuring out how does this entire company work. I need to go and meet a bunch of people so that I can figure out who do I need to connect with in order to make this thing happen, because my manager's not going to just give me, oh, talk to this person. They're not going to tell me. I have to figure all that stuff out, and then I have to wrap all this together. And the only time I actually ask my manager for any help is when somebody tells me, no, we can't do this thing, so I can report back. But I'm in essence responsible. I'm my own project manager, if that makes sense, to make this thing happen and report towards my manager. Have this happen? Yes or no? And that's the sort that freedom is it's fun and so forth, but it's also like a position where you're basically not in a you can be in a team, but your overall job is not to necessarily work with just one product team. Your job is to understand the entire ecosystem of the company, so that you can take charge of basically projects that span more than one team, to make like technological changes or like things that cross the entire company. That is that is literally that's at least how my job works at present. So what I want you to take away from this is that the range for like what it's like to be a senior software engineer in a tech company is usually everything from, it's literally the same thing as the juniors are doing. It's just that you usually code faster, you know more stuff, etc., etc. It's the exact same job. You clock in, do the stand-up, have like the same meetings as the other developers in the team, and then you just work, produce, and then you can range it all the way up to you have like team responsibilities, or you are in meetings very often. You do provide feedback, technical feedback, or plan out technical roadmaps with improvements and so forth, or you're involved with multiple initiatives that the company might be doing, because it really comes down to what level is the company. If you're in a little tiny startup, it's very unlikely that you're doing all of that stuff. If you're in like a gigantic corporation who's like trying to brand themselves or things like that, it might be a very different story. In my case, I've been everything from in between, and like as I was saying, in my current role, it's at that level where it's sort of the experience that I think a lot of people might be, I'm not saying dreaming about, but a lot of people imagine that sort of freedom in some of the bigger IT companies. And as I said, like, it is possible to get to that position if you have the right company, because some companies have needs that is the needs are so difficult that they can't just take any developer and put them on that, or like create a team around that thing, because they simply have so many systems and so much, like the company is so large that the only thing they can really do is to take someone who has the right profile and go, hey, we have this problem, it's over here, we would like this to happen, can you make this happen, and we will help you, like support you and so forth. And then you sort of have to go out, and literally it's almost in a sense like working as your own consultant within the company. You basically need to go into different teams or so forth and so forth, and sometimes it's down to running the entire team until they're in a state where like the technical situation looks really good. And some cases it's like going to meetings or like creating proof of concepts or everything in there in between. It really comes down to the needs of that company. But I would say that's after that, if you're going to claim that you're something more than that, then you're usually like an enterprise architect or something like that. I've never really heard of anybody who is still quote unquote just a senior software engineer who were doing more than something like that. Higher up is like basically all enterprise architecture and like management and so forth. Have a great day.